Hello, my name is Samantha, and welcome to the second lesson in our Girls in STEM Java curriculum. Last lesson, we talked about print statements, variables, and math functions. Today, we'll be talking about if statements and logic. If you haven't done Java before, we recommend that you watch our previous video first. I'd like to introduce Lucy, who will be the instructor for today's lesson.
Hello and welcome to your second Girls in STEM lesson. First, we're going to do a few warm-up problems with variables and print statements. Then we'll talk about logical conditions, if statements, and else statements. At the end, we'll do some practice with these concepts. Let's get started. First, let's make a new replit called Lesson 2. You can pause the video here if you need to. The first warm-up asks us to write a program that creates two variables, A and B, and perform addition, multiplication, finding the minimum, and raising to a power such as A to the power of B. A and B can be set to any integer value you want. Be sure to print out the results using as many print statements as needed. It's pretty straightforward, so you can pause the video here, create a new REPL, and try it yourself. If you need help with the Java math functions, look back on Lesson 1 slides, which can be found in the description below. Once you finish, take a look at the key. We can set A and B to any value, but we choose 2 and 3 respectively. Then we printed out descriptions of our math functions and the resulting values. First, we are going to learn about Java conditions. In Java, we use things called conditions to compare data. For example, we can compare two variables and see if one is greater than, less than, or equal to another variable. If you want to use these slides as a reference, check out the link in the description below. Now, let's move on to what an if statement is and how we write them in Java. If statements always have conditions, which is first checked. If the condition is true, only then will the code under the if statement be executed. In Replit, try copying and running the code below. The print statement should run. Since the statement 100 is greater than 5 is true, what happens when we change the condition? Let's do something like 100 is less than or equal to 5. Try it now. Nothing should have been printed. This is because the condition 100 is less than or equal to 5 is not true. When we write if statements, we can also use variables in our conditions. In this example, we check if A is greater than B. If the value assigned to A is greater than the value assigned to B, then the code inside should be executed. In our example, since 5 is greater than 3, the code gets executed. Now, we'll talk about the else statement. Else statements can be added after if statements. If-else statements, or if-then-else statements, prove a second option for the code to execute if the condition in the if statement is false. We should note that the else statement does not have a condition. Let's look at an example. Look at the code below. What would happen when you run the program? You can pause the video here if you need to. Well, our if statement checks if the variable number is divided by 2. If it is, then we print the statement, the number is even. Otherwise, we print that the number is odd. Since our number is set to 26, the if statement gets executed. Look at the code below. What happens when you run the program? You can pause the video here if you need to. Like the previous example, we check if a variable meets a condition. In this case, we check if the variable age is less than 18. Since the age is set to 21, the condition for the if statement is not met, and the code will execute the else statement. Let's try an example. In Replit, create a file called num of siblings. First, we'll create a variable called num siblings and set it equal to the number of siblings you have. Then, create an if-else statement that prints out the stated output. Pause the video here and write your code. And here's the key. For this example, we used 2 siblings, then used the if statement structure, check if the number of siblings is equal to 0. Remember to use 2 equal signs. If that's true, we'll print out you are an only child. Otherwise, we'll print you have siblings. What if we wanted to test more than just 2 conditions? We could use something called an else-if statement. Else-if statements provide another condition to test if the first condition is false. Just like with the if block, we can add another block called an else-if and pass it a condition. The else-if is executed after the if statement but before the else statement. Here's an example of an else-if statement. If the area is less than 2, then the size is small. Otherwise, if the area is less than 5, the size is medium. If neither of these 2 conditions are met, then the size is large. Now, let's try some practice questions. This question asks, using an if-else statement, how can you navigate the black triangle to reach the light gray square? It also gives us a list of possible moves or functions that we can use to get there. Pretend that the if-else statement will loop until we reach the square. Pause the video now and resume the video to go over the answer. Here's the key. By looking at the path, we can tell that we only need to move forward and rotate right in order to reach the gray square. So we'll check if the arrow can move forward. If so, then we'll move the arrow forward. If not, then we'll know that we have to rotate right before we can move forward again. Let's try another problem. Using the table, come up with a possible if-then-else statement that would print out the given outcomes. For instance, if the early and present variables were both true, then we print the early bird catches the worm. Likewise, if the early was false, but the present was true, we would print better late than never. Pause the video now and resume the video to go over the answer. Here's the key. Since our variable has the value of true or false, we'll use booleans to represent them. Since we have 2 variables, we'll use an if block and an else if block and an else block. First, we check if the early is present. If that is true, no matter the value of present, we have the same output. If early is false, then we'll check the present. If present is true, we'll print better late than never. Otherwise, we have the default output hello. Here's our final practice problem. This is a slight variation to the previous question. Using the table, come up with a possible if statement. Pause the video now and resume the video to go over the answer. And here's the key. We can keep most of our answer from the previous question. However, unlike in the previous question, the value of the present now matters in all cases, even when early is true. To handle this, we can create a nested if statement or an if statement inside of another if statement. There are other ways to do this, so if your solution does not look exactly like ours, that's okay. Let's go through the sample solution. First, we'll check if early is true. If it is, then we need to check if present is true. If it is, we'll print the early bird catches the worm. If it isn't, then we'll print that's a long bathroom break.
Hi, I'm Alexis. Thank you so much for watching and congrats on completing your second Girls in STEM lesson. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at our email ccagirlswhocode@gmail.com or comment down below.
I wanted to thank the following on the production team for all the hard work that went into this lesson. All of the slides and videos in this series are available on our website and in the description below. I hope you'll join us again in our next lesson on strings.